Welcome to episode 331, I believe. And tonight is going to be a interview that I pre-recorded earlier a couple of days ago. And it was with Storm King Comics, and it was the creators Brad and Leslie Sun, and we were also joined by the publisher of um, Storm King, Sandy Carpenter. So yeah, it's about a 45-minute interview. So just sit back, um, enjoy the interview, and we'll be back here in a bit to talk about uh, where you can find this. So let me just do this. And all right, welcome back to the show. And today we're talking about some Storm King books. So let me introduce everybody. I'll let everybody who's here introduce themselves, and that we'll start from there.
Hi, I'm Sandy King. I have Storm King Comics, and I'm here to introduce Wesley Brad's son.
Okay.
The writers of Chaplain.
That's okay. Right. And I'm Wesley Sun. I'm one of the authors on Chaplain. I work with my brother Brad. We've been publishing and writing, and Brad's been illustrating also comics for since 2012, and we're psyched to have our first book out with Storm King, which is Chaplain.
Yep, and I am Brad, the other half of the Sun Bros. So Wesley and I, along with the great team that Storm King put together for us, just recently released our graphic novel Chaplain.
So I like to start by finding out about your history. Your history with comics, both as a reader and as a creator. So Brad or Wes want to go first? Then we're
Yeah,
we're connected.
Yeah, right, exactly. So just so people are clear, we are actual brothers. We write as the Sun Bros, but we are actually brothers. So we grew up together. So of course, we share a lot of the same background with pop culture and things like that. So I think we've always really been into comics from an early age. So Wesley can talk more about his specific history for comics, but I can tell you that when I started getting more serious into comics as an art form past the, just like the general superhero genres and things like that, was probably in middle school, sometime like 7th grade, when I started learning about Sam Keith and the Max and some of those early Image comics. And that really kind of blew my mind and opened my my mind to different possibilities with storytelling. And probably around that time is when I started getting more serious about thinking of comics in terms of actual as an art, as literature, and also wanting to seriously become a comic book artist myself.
Yeah, and I grew up reading comics as a kid. Brad and I shared a lot of the same comics, read a lot of the same comics, and I think that it was like maybe in college I started I think there was a time where I thought I had outgrown them, like towards like in high school I kind of put them away, and then it was in college and after that I kind of rediscovered them. And there's been a few titles, characters, and artists and writers that have stuck through me throughout my childhood. The one that I think is enduring for me would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's kind of like from when I was a kid to now, I've just kind of always loved, admired, and been enthralled by. But yeah, always. And then it wasn't until, but I will say that I was new to the comic book, like the Comic-Con scene, and like the thing until Brad and I actually started creating comics. It was like reading comics was kind of a private activity. I enjoyed reading, I always have, but like the larger like Comic-Con world and stuff, I didn't participate in until we were authors.
So what made you guys want to jump into the comic book, making your own comics?
Yeah. So as brothers likely often do, we have little story ideas that we'd come up with just between ourselves idly. But I do actually remember a specific conversation I had with Wesley. Guess this would be probably back in the mid-aughts or something like that, where I actually just, one of our ideas, which became our first graphic novel, Chinatown, we've been talking about it for a while, and I just asked Wesley, do you want to get serious about this and actually put something together for real, as opposed to just keep on talking about it all the time? And yeah, he was totally down. And then from there, we kind of just committed to just starting. I mean, I have a bachelor's in fine arts, so we weren't complete novices, but in terms of putting together a full book, we kind of were. So it just started with like, I guess we should start putting together like a summary, like a plot outline. We weren't sure what we were doing, but we were kind of feeling our way along the way. And then once we had a script, we started getting friends to read it. So we kind of were really just learning how to make a comic while we were creating our first graphic novel. And then it was one of those things where when we were getting close to the end, it was really kind of fortuitous. It was just kind of like the right timing, where crowdsourcing, like Kickstarter, was just starting to become a thing. And we were like, oh, let's just give it a try and see if it'll work for our book. And it ended up paying off really well. And that's kind of how we got our start making our own comics. And then we've been self-publishing for a while. And so Chaplain is our first kind of release from like a distributor that has the kind of reach that Storm King has. So that's kind of exciting for us to move to that next level.
Yeah. That was told very well. I don't need to rehearse what Brad already said. Perfect. But the only thing I would add is that when we get started, I was looking, I'm based in Chicago, and Brad was living in Chicago when we started creating our first comics. Brad's in Boston now. And I remember I was looking into other local indie comic creators, just trying to figure out, because like Brad said, we were learning as we were going. And we were like, well, how do you get started? Like when you're writing your first book, what do you do? And I remember a lot of the advice from some of our colleagues was to kind of start small, like start with like a smaller project and kind of work your way up, because it's cheaper to produce. There'll be quicker projects. And we really went in a different direction. Our first book was it's a few pages shorter than Chaplain, I think, but it was a full-length graphic novel, full color. And I think from the beginning, something I've been really grateful for, and having a creative partner like Brad, is to really tell the stories that we think we can execute well, and we can execute in a particular way. And I think that's where we started with Chinatown, and it's come all the way to Chaplain. Like, I feel like I'm really proud of this book that we did with Sandy and the art team. And I feel like we told the story in a way that only we could, with the particular artists that got assembled together. And so I think that was like a lesson from the very beginning with Chinatown, is that this is it's a supernatural horror story. Chinatown is about people who go missing in Chinatown. And it's a story that we felt like we could tell and we could execute and illustrate in a specific way. And so I feel like we've carried that driving force of like, tell the right story with the right team. And I think the right team was assembled at Storm King. And so I'm so grateful to be partnering with Sandy to put this book out.
So let's jump right into the Chaplain. Kind of give us a broad sense of what it's about, and what were the inspirations behind it?
Well, I'll kind of answer the second part first, and then I'm going to kick it over to Brad to kind of fill in whatever I missed. So I should say that I am a hospital chaplain. I'm actually zooming in now from my office at the hospital. So I have a whole other career when I'm not writing horror comics with Brad, where I've been a hospital chaplain and a jail chaplain. And it's one of those things where Brad went to school for art. I did not go to school for creative writing. But what has, I think, helped me a lot as a writer is I just had so much dialogue with people. Like, all I do is talk to people, hear stories, and talk to them. And for anybody, any of your viewers who don't know, chaplains are professionals who get called in to help people do grief work. So people are going through tremendous transition, illness, death, sometimes things that are positive transitions in their life, birth, these sorts of things. But either way, they're dealing with significant change, and chaplains come in to help with emotional process. I met Sandy on do you remember this, Sandy? We met at a panel at C2E2 in Chicago about trigger warnings in horror. And is this how you remember it? That's how I remember it.
Yep.
And I remember I actually didn't know who was on the panel. I got pulled in at the last minute, and I met Sandy on the panel, and I just, the panel went was a great experience for me, but I wanted the conversation to continue. So Sandy, I went to your table the next day, and you were so gracious. You invited me back behind at the Storm King booth, and we just talked for at least an hour, I think, about death, grief, mortality, life, afterlife, these sorts of things. And that was kind of the beginning of our friendship, but also a larger conversation around, well, you know, how is this context of chaplaincy? Like, what like you and I sort of fleshed out a lot of what is interesting theologically and mythologically about characters' life, suffering, and grief. And in a minute, I'll invite you to fill in whatever I've forgotten about our meeting. But later on, when we were like, you know, we really ought to be in business together. We really ought to we really got to get part of the Storm King Libraries. I remember one of the things you said to me is, we really need to share the conversations you and I have had with a larger audience. Was part of the inspiration for this. You want to add anything to that, Sandy?
Well, I remember that you were just laughing on the panel when I got stuck with the guy who was traumatized by Game of Thrones, and he was a member of the American Vampire Society, they'd been brought up on murder charges for acting on their impulses, and at the same time, the leader of the panel had said she felt that she didn't realize there should be issues of consent in vampire books, and I was trying to get through to people that there were no issues of consent because you have to invite vampires in by the mythology. And you were laughing because I couldn't get rid of the guy from the Vampire Society. And I was saying, thanks for the help, buddy. And you're saying I've dealt with worse. And back at the booth, we wound up talking about issues of faith and things like that. And it's always interesting when an atheist like me winds up talking to a chaplain and talking about horror as allegory form of storytelling. And it took about a decade of talking to Wes every convention and getting him drunk under the guise of saying this will help you sleep.
Yes.
Convince him that this was a great platform for. I believe that horror can address lots of issues that go beyond the spattering of blood and various, splatterpunk kind of things. And that's why I really wanted them to weigh in on these issues in graphic novel form.
Yeah, I will. What I'll add is that, so over those 10 years or whatever it was of us talking, having Sandy buy me many a martini and sorting it out, Brad and I were continuing to work on our horror comics, and we would always swap books, Sandy, you and I, at every show. And you were familiar with how we write, how we tell stories. It was 10 years of our friendship, but also getting familiar with each other's body of work, getting to know the Storm King Library, getting to know what the Sun Brothers are putting out. And so eventually, we were like, oh, we really ought to do something. And we sent you some ideas on stories. And at that time, Chaplain was very nascent. We hadn't sketched out the characters yet. We hadn't sorted out the plot yet, but we were like, this is what we got to do. And when you picked that project that you wanted to move forward with, that's the one I want. I remember me and Brad, we told you, okay, that's the one in the earliest stage of development. And you said, all right, well, then let's get developing. And so, Brad, do you want to say a little bit about what Chaplain is actually about, the book itself?
Yeah. So what I'll say is just overall across the board in general, Storm King has been great to work with because of the kind of freedom that they gave us while we were developing the scripts. I think Sandy's kind of marching orders was just like, something about chaplains related, to the seeds that, as you saw, were planted with their conversations with Wesley, and that she wanted it to be a story. As opposed to like a memoir or something like that. She did want it to be still in the fictional realm and a horror story. But beyond that, honestly, we were kind of given free reign to play. Obviously, we checked in with them with drafts and outlines and things like that. And we were given notes of like the direction to go. But in general, we were kind of given free range to follow what our normal process was. For this particular book, since Wesley's experience informed so much of the initial ideas, I think my role in those early stages was probably being a sounding board of what was important for the viewer to understand, or the reader to understand, about what a chaplain was that they may not. So from someone on the inside, he may not have realized what information needed to be conveyed more clearly, and what, honestly, what was the most interesting parts of his job that someone on the outside may not know about, and that kind of thing. And hammering those things home was kind of important, filtering through different ideas from his experiences that could contribute to the story. I think the two big things that I kept on bringing up to make clear that I found interesting, and that also that other readers probably wouldn't necessarily be aware of, was one, how the chaplain works with the rest of the hospital staff, like how they're integrated into the medical team, what they can provide, not just to the patients, but to the doctors and the nurses and the other staff as a sort of social worker / patient advocate, and bring that to the table. And then the other part too, that I think a lot of people probably are anxious about if they're thinking of talking to a chaplain, is I think people tend to be worried like the chaplain's going to come in and try to convert them to a religion or something like that. But at the end of the day, that the chaplain's personal religious beliefs ultimately factor in relatively little into the job that they do with their patients. It's more about facilitating what the patient needs, unless he can chip in a little bit if he on that if he feels the need to. But after those initial things were put in place, honestly, our writing process was quite similar to our other books. We've always had an interest in that, as Sandy kind of brought up, that kind of psychological aspect of horror, the way that it could kind of illustrate kind of the inner world externally, and be used as analogy for that kind of thing. So the setting of the hospital and the patient's trauma and the chaplain's burnout, all of that kind of worked into the framework of that we're familiar writing with. And the process was similar to most of our books, which is we tended to break up the scenes, kind of get going on the dialogue and things like that. And then for this particular book, because we were working with a different artist team, and I wasn't illustrating myself, it was important for me to go back in once we had the dialogue kind of set and give like panel breakdowns and notes, just so that the artist would know what the key elements are that we needed for the story. So being a little more structured with that in our script stage this time was a little bit different. But the team we ended up with, which is Raulo Caceres did the illustrations and Ryan Wynn did the colors, they both did an amazing job. So, we gave them lots of feedback while they were illustrating. But honestly, we couldn't be happier with what they came up with.
Yeah. I think what just to add, just kind of name what the book is about, because I think we've mentioned that yet. So Chaplain centers on an aging chaplain, kind of on the verge of retirement, and as he's in the sort of twilight of his career and twilight of his life, he's working and coaching an intern, a young chaplain that will presumably replace him. And that is what I often do during the day. I train chaplains at the University of Chicago. That's what I do during the day. And through this process, through this kind of existential terror and existential question of what it means to end your career, your life, to stop, he encounters a horrible creature from Filipino folklore called an aswang. His intern, his protege, is Filipino, and because of her belief system and her cultural mythology, he gets to encounter this horrible thing. And in some ways, chaplaincy is about that. It's about encountering other people's beliefs. Just as Brad said, it's often meeting the patient where they're at and their belief system. And that's the piece. I really feel like the core of the book and the heart of the book, we really got to take shape when we kind of nailed the relationship between the chaplain and his student, like that relationship, and also kind of nailing the cultural mythology of the aswang. And I remember, Sandy, early on when you were reading drafts, you gave us a note that I think was a really helpful. This was, and I remember, like Brad's right, we had such creative freedom. I only remember, Sandy, you got to correct me if I'm wrong. I remember 2 instructions. One was, all right, guys, we don't go to print until I'm happy with it. I remember, like, you're like, whatever deadlines we set, when it comes out, when you know, Jon Carpenter's Night Terrors comes out, when it's a good book, like when we're ready for it. I remember that. And I remember you said, this is my memory, is that about the Chaplain character, like, don't make him too angry at the start. Make sure he's also sad. That the story has a tragic element to it, that, you know, as he approaches the end of his life. And I remember that was like a really helpful note as we were locking in the characters in the story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So as you were developing the characters in this story, how much of the chaplain is based on you, Wes, or how much of your experience, you know, did you bring in to the character?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a fair amount, but that would be true of probably all the characters in the book, not just the chaplain. There's a nurse named Simone, and the intern's name is Maria, and there's the chaplain himself. And I think a fair amount of me, and I imagine a fair amount of Brad, is in all 3 characters to some extent. I will say that I think I am in a reflective phase of my career. So I'm 44. At the time of this recording, I'm 44. So I sit equidistant between my colleagues in their mid-60s who are exiting the profession and my students who are in their mid-20s who are entering the profession. So I'm like firmly middle-aged, right? Plus or minus 20 years, essentially. And so I do think that a lot of the existential questions our chaplain is facing is, I think, somewhat inspired by me looking forward to what it would be like to exit and see what I leave behind. But I actually see that as a universal looking forward. I think, you know, like what does happen when it's time to pack it up, either to leave this mortal coil, or to leave a vocation or a profession that you've poured decades into, or to wonder if any of the professional or personal relationships you've forged over time have mattered, or whether they need to be repaired. Like, it is true that maybe the start of the book had a lot of particulars related to my life, meaning the context of a hospital, the vocation of a chaplain. But I think of the story and the characters as not necessarily locked into me as a person or a professional. I think that is the crucible in which it all occurs, and an intriguing one and a horrifying one. Hospitals are scary, but ultimately, I don't think that the chaplain is too based on me at all. I imagine he's as much Brad as he is Wesley. I'm interested in, Brad, actually, what you think about.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a cliche where writers say there's like a little bit of them in each of their characters. You know, but it really is true that, you know, to find your way into the character, to be able to write as that character convincingly, you do need to find that aspect of the character that you can pull from your own kind of actual feelings and emotions and history to get to. And on top of that, too, like Wesley said, a lot of the story is about the chaplain reaching the end of his career, moving on, and what that kind of means and how that ties into the very purpose of his profession as a chaplain. What I can say is, and I don't think I've said this in an interview before, so this will be an exclusive to you, is for a long time, I've been interested in, I mean, this is part of the horror genre in general, but specifically in the idea that we live in a sort of post-apocalyptic society. I'm talking about in real life, in terms of definitely on like a psychic on a psychic level, whether, you know, your opinions may vary about how close we are to the actual apocalypse, but in terms of on a spiritual, mental level, I think that a lot of us have that feeling that we are in some sort of post-history stage, that this is getting towards the end. And so thinking of the characters in terms of that psychology of how they adapt to that idea that they are reaching the end of something, that it feels like we're at a point where the majority of history or the majority of their experience is in the past. How to react to that is something that is kind of almost like a litmus test I put through all my characters through, and like, well, how would they react to that feeling of being at the end? And that is relevant to this story specifically.
Interesting. I agree, and I think that as writers, we we're people watchers. So it's not just ourselves.
Yeah.
It's our experiences from childhood, through watching our parents, through watching everyone around us, that we bring to characters. And at Storm King, between myself and Sean Sobchak, our managing editor, we're always putting our litmus test. The only time we really interfere with the people, we hire people, we bring people into the fold that we think are really good. And the only times we interfere or say something is when we think, is this really, are you writing the expected here in this scene? Are you deviating from what your vision is? And it's really a matter of listening to their voices. And in a couple places going, did you write what you are thinking we expect to hear, or are you still staying true to yourself on this page? It's not a matter of writing what you think we want to hear.
Mm.
And that's about the only time we step in.
So Sandy, I know we've kind of, hit around it, but what was it about, this particular book that, appealed to you and made you want to bring it to, the publisher?
Well, I am the publisher.
Well, yeah. To be published.
I just think that it's a really unique story that I try to only publish things that bring something unique to horror, science fiction, this platform of storytelling. And I mean, while we do publish some things for kids and stuff, it's basically adult books that are more existential in their approach to the format. And I thought this was ideal. I just thought, wow, this is my ideal book to publish. It brings up all the questions that you have as you get older. Issues of life after death, issues of faith, all of the things that as you get older, you start thinking about more. This is not a 16-year-old's book. They're not thinking about things that way. So for me, it was an ideal book to have out. I'm really excited about it. I really, they hit the nail on the head for what I go for. And I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be happier to have this in our lineup. And you know what? I'm not, I guess I don't have real commercial sense. I have worth sense. And so that's what I care the most about. But in getting them Raúl to pair them up with, I look for great marriages. And, I just get really happy when that works out.
So, question for the brothers. How is the creative process as brothers? I know I have an older and a younger brother, and I don't know if I could work on a project like this with my brothers. So, how do you do it? Were there any challenges that you guys faced, or how did you solve any problems that may arise? Is that because why you guys had to move so far apart?
Brad, you want to start?
Yeah. So of course, yes, of course, disagreements and things come up, and if you're brothers or have a long history with anybody as a collaborator, obviously there'll be baggage you bring to it. So that's something you have to deal with, really in any collaboration, but perhaps it is enhanced a little bit if it's family. I will say the positive aspect of it is because we have so many of the same reference points. I think in terms of communicating ideas to each other, that kind of naturally flows in a way that a certain shorthand of references and influences that might be more difficult for collaborators that don't have so much history together. And I think this is probably true, but I tend to think that in all of our stories, not just Chaplain, usually if there's a artistic disagreement, a creative disagreement, it's more about what is the best way to convey the idea that we're trying to put across, or the best way to execute the scene, as opposed to the actual core concepts of what we find interesting about a certain character or a certain scenario. Those, I think, we tend to be in lockstep. And then all the squabbles tend to be about, like, no, I think it's better if it's worded this way, or I like it staged better this way, or when should this character be introduced, or that kind of thing. In a way, we can jump quicker to that kind of actually breaking the story part, because we are so in sync with what the core concept and the important like foundation of the story is.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what we've gotten good at over the years, certainly it took us a couple of books, is to what parts of the creative process can be done from afar, and what do we really need to get into the room together and do. So like a lot of our scripting, sometimes Brad will work on a scene or a character and then send me a draft, and then I'll read it, and then we'll talk about it on the phone, and that's fine. But I do think there's a certain kind of real-time creativity where throughout the process of writing Chaplain, Brad would fly to Chicago, or I would fly to Boston, or there were a couple of Comic Cons where we met up for, and we were like in the hotel going through drafts of things. And so I do think that we've gotten pretty good at giving ourselves assignments and deadlines, right, to make sure that the writing gets done. But I do appreciate, in terms of the collaborative process of getting in the same room together, even just to do the dialogue out loud, just reading it out loud to kind of hammer out, like you said, what specific lines are going to work or not. And then the other thing I'll add is that the added piece that was different for us is having this other creative team, the illustrator and the colorist. And to Sandy, what you said about making great marriages, I was quite surprised at how intentional you and Sean were, and making sure that the artist team was a unit. And I was quite surprised at how interactive after the script was done. So after we had submitted everything and Sandy and Sean had looked it over and they said, we want to go forward with this, how much the artists would send us pages and ask for notes and say, what do you guys think about this? And the colorist Ryan would get involved and so on. And I was just blown away at that level of collaboration. And then I'll say, as a non-artist, so I don't draw anything, I'm a writer only. Brad is a writer and an artist. Brad was able to give notes to the visual team as a writer who is also an artist. That also kind of blew me away, where I was like, there was a level of cohesion, I think, between the script as written and the execution of that script by the art team that I couldn't be more. I was so happy, so pleased with. I didn't know, Sandy, actually, when we got started with it, are they going to take the script and then we'll just see it when it comes out on a bookshelf somewhere? Or I was really quite surprised that I was surprised by the degree of input you wanted from us about selecting the artist team, and then surprised again once the illustration and coloring was underway, how much the artists reached out to us and said, hey, give us some feedback, page to page, scene to scene. That was quite a nice surprise from our usual process.
Well, I think one of the things that's really different at Storm King from, say, DC and Marvel is I bring my background in film to it, where from the first day, everybody's on a team and talking.
Right.
Every single step of the way. Sean is involved every step of the way. The artist, the letterer, everybody's watching, everybody's proofing, everybody's doing everything together and talking. I don't understand when other companies have that isolationist deal and only going through the editor and that kind of stuff. I just don't see how that works.
And well, one last question for the brothers. What was the biggest takeaway or lesson learned during this project that you hope to use in the future on other books?
Oh, that's a good question.
To always come to Storm King.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Keep working with Storm King. That's the first lesson.
Well, I will say yes. As our first major book, not self-publishing ourselves, so in other words, not having full control over every aspect of it, it couldn't be a better introduction to that than working with Storm King. Like I said, they took care of all the stuff that's not fun, like picking out printers and paper and all that kind of distribution, figuring that stuff out, and it let us just sink our teeth into the creative aspect. And like Wesley said, being able to communicate directly to the writer and the colorist about things like that was great. I don't think Sandy will mind me mentioning. Last time I saw Sandy in person, she said to me something that made me know that she had my number. Like she knew me exactly. She said that for me to be happy with the art, she knew that there needed to be a certain madness in the art and a certain chaos. But she didn't want, she needed to make sure she could still keep me under control. So she found an art team that could satisfy that itch in me, and still give her that kind of grounded reality of space that she likes to operate from before she goes off into crazy land. And yeah, I think we did thread that needle great with this book, that we were able to go into those kind of more psychedelic spaces that I like to play around in, while still keeping a foot in that kind of grounded day-to-day hospital life, that grittiness. So basically, I if there's a lesson I learned, it's that is that you can have it all. you can work with a publisher that can give you that distribution and that extra level of clout, and still not have to give up your creative control of things, and you could still kind of get your voice out there.
Yeah. I would underscore that is that there. I remember getting it. Sandy, I love you. We've been friends for a long time, but I was like, all right, we're going big industry publisher now. Like we're indie guys. Like, are we going to lose? Yeah, exactly. Are we going to lose? Exactly what you said, Brett. Are we going to lose that
control?
That control and that independent spirit. And I know how good it can be, right? You can work with a big publisher. You can work with a big name like Sandy King and get published under Jon Carpenter's Night Terrors. And it can still be that the publisher wants you to do what you do, right? Like, in other words, like Sandy is putting our book out, not because she wants to change the work we do, but because she's familiar with the work we do. And one of the things you said to me, Sandy, early on while we were still going through drafts, you said, I know your work. I know what you and Brad are capable of. It ought to be on a bigger stage. That's what we're going to do. We're not changing the process. We're amplifying it. I appreciate that. And I will say, in terms of the art process lessons learned, one of the biggest pieces for me was I love every single person on the art team was fantastic, but I just want to shout out Ryan Wynn's colors on this book. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
When I was getting, so I say this as a non-artist, but as somebody who works with artists and looks at a lot of art a lot of time, I was looking at Raulo's work and his line work and his inks, and there were parts where I'm like, it would look so good black and white. Are we sure we want to do this in color? Like, what are we gonna do? And when Ryan came through, and again in collaboration with Raulo and in collaboration with us, when we found the palette and the tone and the psychedelic way we wanted to, and he just kind of ran with it, I was like, oh, this, like, in the same way that working, Sandy, with you in Stormfield, like, oh, this is how good it can be working with a publisher. I'm like, oh, this is how good it can be with coloring. Like, I was like, this is fantastic. Like, and just as like industry wide, like as a medium, I'm like, oh, so we're really just scratching the surface of what coloring in comics can be like. And I feel like I like what you said, Sandy, about this being a unique book. And, you only want to put out books that add something to the larger landscape of the genre. Like, I feel like visually we've been able to do that too. And so I feel like in terms of lessons learned, I'm like, oh, so that's how good it can be working with a publisher, but also like, oh, like I often think as a writer only, my contribution to the project is kind of part of the writing only, right? But having such a collaborative role in all these different artists coming together, I see how great it can be that way too. So I just visually just very happy with how it came out.
I knew Brad wouldn't be happy unless he had a psychotic color.
Yes. Well, like you said, you got his number. You nailed it. You got us.
Well, as we kind of wrap up here, why don't the brothers give one last pitch for the book, and where people can find out, more of their work, and if you guys are going to be at any shows, and then Sandy can give a pitch for Storm King.
Sure. Brad, you want to take that, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, definitely. You can follow us online. We're not very good at social media, but our Instagram is probably the best way to keep active with us. That would be at the Sun Bros on Instagram. We have some things coming out. I'm not sure if this will be out by then, but we're going to be with Storm King at Midsummer Scream in Long Beach just next week. But if you miss us there, we're both going to be at New York Comic Con as well this year. So definitely stop on by.
Stop by and say hi.
Oh, very good. Yes, we're looking forward to seeing you. So we'll of course have Chaplain there to promote, and then we'll have some of our previous work as well too. So definitely stop on by and see us there, and we're going to be adding shows. So yeah, follow us online, and we'll keep you guys up to date with that.
Anything to add, Wesley?
No, other than like Instagram's the best way. There's some other smaller shows like in Chicago where I'm based. We're going to do. But yeah, following us at the Sun Bros is the best way to do it, and you can order Chaplain wherever books are sold. So it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books. You can order it from the Storm King site, wherever you get books. You can order it online, and if there's a brick and mortar shop that you like to support, ask them to carry Chaplain. We'd love to see it on more shelves too.
And Sandy, I want to give a quick pitch for Storm King as a publisher.
Storm King's a great destination for everything horror and sci-fi, all the way from kids' books up through the adult books. And we're going to be at Long Beach for Midsummer Scream. We're going to be at New York Comic Con in LA in October. We'll be at Golden Apple for our annual signings there. You can reach us at stormkingcomics.com. You can reach us at Storm King Comics Instagram. Basically, if you look up Storm King Comics, we're there.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much, and look forward to meeting you guys in person at New York Comic Con.
Absolutely,
Sandy. I think we've met. I know I'm good friends with Richard Clark, and I know that he does a lot of artwork for you. So
sure.
I always have to stop by the booth and see him, when I'm there too.
Oh,
so.
Great. He's a favorite of yours.
Well, I want to thank all of you for taking the time this afternoon to chat about the book, and hope to talk about more Storm King books in the future.
That's great.
Great to meet you, Chad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. It was an awesome interview. Really enjoyed the opportunity, and I look forward to chatting more with the creators of Storm King, and getting to know them and about the work. So check out Chaplain. It's available now, as you said, at your local comic store or wherever you order books. So yeah, that'll do it for this episode, and we will be back next week with another episode. So until then, the world can be a crappy place, but do something good, help someone, support local creators, music. Just be kind.